Hey, so glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Today we're going to be talking about a new issue poll from Harvard Harris, which suggests that the mainstream media narratives are not landing with the American people. There's a whole lot of issues where the American people, I would say, are on the right side of the issue. Scott, by the way, Scot Bertram in for Jim Garrity today. Let's not bury that headline. Scott is the general manager of WRFH, Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 on the campus of Hillsdale College. He's also the director of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network and the host of many of their podcasts in that network, including the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour. So, Scott, always good to have you with us.
Good to be here, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Always glad to have you. So, yeah, we'll be digging into that poll, which is not going to make a lot of newsrooms very happy. We'll also be taking a look at a story that should have gotten a lot more attention. There was a traditional mass in Washington, D.C. just before the start of this year's Supreme Court session. Happens every year. What doesn't happen every year? Somebody trying to blow it up with 200 explosives. Yeah, another left-wing nut job. Thankfully, nobody injured this time. And we're going to be looking at Katie Porter, the leading Democrat at the moment for governor of California in 2026. But if she does any more interviews like the ones we're going to highlight, that may hurt her. You know, the most populous blue states, Scott, are New York and California. Kathy Hochul, not at all popular for a myriad of reasons in New York, and the leading Democrat in California, not too impressive either. So as Trump said many years ago, they're not sending their best.
just thinking of almost the exact same thing. Like, she was in the primary last time with Adam Schiff for Senate, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, okay, Schiff or Porter, and now he won. he can't, he's not going to run for governor. And now you're just left with her. Like, goodness gracious. Yeah, I mean, I know it's an automatic blue state for the most part, but come on.
Right. Yeah, Schiff versus Porter is like Mamdani versus Cuomo. It's only different shades of horrible. So anyway, we'll get into all of that as time goes on. But let's start with talking about your health, because we want to keep you healthy, because more than 30% of Americans have a sluggish liver. That's a problem that often goes undetected. And when it does
That's actually the name of my fantasy football team this year, too, the Sluggish Livers.
yes, exactly. How are they doing? Are they off to a pretty good start?
4-1. So, yeah.
That's not bad at all. But seriously, your liver issues, if they do go undetected, sometimes they can lead to very serious health problems and be very difficult to deal with. But Dose is on a mission to educate us all on why it's so important to maintain your liver health, and has created an incredible product to help you do just that. Dose for Your Liver was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion, and maintain your body's filter. In a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial, Dose for Your Liver lowered liver enzyme levels by 50% in more than 86% of participants. And if you stick with Dose, you'll feel the incredible benefits over time, like more energy, better digestion, reduced bloating, healthier liver enzyme function, reduction in brain fog, better sleep. And it's great. It's gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and vegan. So support your health with Dose Daily. Save 25% on your first month when you subscribe at dosedaily.co/3ml or enter the code 3ml at checkout. Please note that 25% discount applies only to subscription orders, not one-time purchases. Cancel anytime, no hassle. That's dosedaily.co/3ml to get 25% off your first monthly subscription with the code 3ML. All right, Scott, on to a new poll from Harvard and Harris looking at how Americans feel about a variety of issues. There are some headline issues here that some folks pointed out over at Hot Air, always a great site. For example, 71% of Americans support using the U.S. military to kill drug traffickers in Latin America, specifically destroying those boats that you've seen the footage of, the drone footage, bringing drugs in from South America. 71% overall, even 56% of Democrats agree with that. Also, 75% of Americans support Israel over Hamas. That's a pretty strong percentage. But when you get to the issues that the mainstream media would have you believe are just absolutely horrible positions, from whether it's the Trump administration or Republican positions in general, the American people have very different ideas. The most popular issue overall is lowering prescription drug prices for Medicare recipients and low-income patients, 86%. Deporting immigrants who are here illegally and have committed crimes, 78%, including 69% of Democrats. Apparently none of them, though, are in office for the Democratic Party. Undertaking a full-scale effort to find and eliminate fraud and waste in government expenditures, 75%. So that would include Doge and potentially what Russ Vogt is up to right now. Closing the border with added security and policies that discourage illegal crossings, 68%. There are so many issues here. Banning men who have undergone operations and hormones to become women from girls' sports, 65%. You've also got even just deporting all immigrants who are here illegally. Forget the criminal background. Besides coming into the country illegally, 56% support that. In fact, the only two that are underwater, tariffs on goods from China, Mexico, and Canada at 49%, and making cost cuts to Medicaid by adding work requirements for those up to 64 years old, only 42%. So, Scott, the mainstream media likes to pull its hair out or figuratively light it on fire every time there's a Republican position on anything. But when you ask the people just on the issue, not do you support Trump on this issue or whatever the question is, overall, most of these issues lean to the right, and some of them significantly.
Yes, President Obama recently, and he's not the only one, but the one freshest in my mind, began a post on X by saying, Republicans are losing on the issues, and that's why they're striking out in these ways. Trump's losing on the issues, that's why he has to do X, Y, or Z. And this poll and others demonstrate that that's not the case. And that's actually a little unusual because on a topic like gun control, even if people wouldn't vote in that manner of wanting draconian restrictions or confiscations of guns, a lot of times they'll tell pollsters that, yes, that's actually what I want. Yeah, I want that. And then they'll vote a different way. But in recent polls, we've not seen that taking place, actually. It's been reversed. And people are more likely to say, yeah, actually, I don't think we need to have more Second Amendment restrictions. And so you're seeing that happen more often. You're seeing on this issue by issue, again, as you mentioned, if it's not connected to Trump, perhaps, people are more likely to say, yes, that's a good idea. I like that idea. And this is compounding the Democrats' problems. And I've made this point previously. It is as if for a large portion of them, they have forgotten how to do politics. They have forgotten how politics work, which is, well, I mean, Jay Jones has a theory about this, but normally most of us try to convince each other through argument and debate, not, wishing death upon an opponent or his children, that our position is correct. Democrats for a long time have relied upon the mainstream media to simply do the campaigning for them and to make those arguments for them. Now, since fewer people are getting their news from legacy media institutions, fewer people are exposed to those arguments, we call them that, and are getting their news information from other places. And I think that's causing them to rethink a number of these topics and react in different ways when they are asked those questions. And that's, again, one of the main reasons why people are so freaked out about what's happening at CBS with Barry Weiss. Yes, there's A, B, C, and D, but at core, Democrats have relied on major news networks to do the dirty work for them, to ask tough questions of Republicans and paint everything that they do in a bad light and embrace Democratic ideas and Democratic proposals and say, well, you're a fool if you don't agree with this, clearly. And if Barry Weiss is doing anything different at CBS to move away from that model, it's going to put another, it's going to take another chunk out of them when it comes to their effectiveness in messaging, because by and large, these candidates have forgotten how to do politics.
No, that's exactly right. And somebody was saying, the mainstream media, because somebody was complaining about, what's CBS doing wrong that they need so much change?
Yes,
and somebody says, well, they assume that the liberal argument is right and the conservative argument is wrong, and that's where they start from and work their way backwards on that. So that's not good. And when it comes to some of these issues like immigration, Trump didn't win Illinois. He obviously didn't win Chicago, but compared to previous cycles, because of the flood of illegal immigrants just being poured into Chicago, the numbers were much better for Trump than last time. Not enough to win the state, but it was a significant change. Same thing in New York City. And I think that's probably why he was closer in New Jersey than before. So people just assume that, oh, it's a blue area, they're going to support whatever the blue position on the issue. That's not the case, because once these issues come and smack you in the face because it's happening right where you live, people's minds can change. And the left just assumed that wouldn't be the case, but it is.
Yeah, and I think something else is Democrats have become, and liberals have become, so closely and so specifically defined by just a handful of issues. They will do anything to protect illegal immigrants. They will do anything now to protect crime in major cities. Trump says, let's fight crime. Democrats say, let's not. You get used to it after a while anyway, right? It's no big deal. And on the trans issues, too. I mean, men and women's bathrooms, men and women's locker rooms, men and women's sports. Democrats are so closely identified and defined by just a handful of issues in which they are in the extreme minority that they're not even talking about other issues that Republicans are running away with at this point.
Yeah. There was a brief window after the election last year where the Democrats started to sound like they were okay with deporting criminal illegals. Now they won't do it. I mean, every single option, every single opportunity to deport a criminal illegal, somebody's standing up on the left for the criminal illegal, no matter who ICE is rounding up, no matter who is on the brink of deportation, and then they go shopping to some left-wing judge to delay the process. Just unbelievable.
I know we talked Illinois yesterday, but a very small one here on that issue. So the Chicago Tribune today, which I read every day for reasons I'm not aware of anymore, begins with story after story after story about ICE is bad and protesters are out and, these horrible deportations. They picked these people up for no reason whatsoever except they were in the country illegally and they had deportation orders and all. Like on page 8, there's a story about a contract hit being put out on the senior officer of ICE, is it Bovino? I believe is his name. I apologize if I'm getting it wrong. But, and it turns out the guy who's doing it is a major, he's been arrested by ICE because he is a major gang leader in Chicago. And, surprise, surprise, he is in the country illegally. So he's been arrested. He's going to be deported. So that's a good news story, buried under all this other stuff in the paper today.
Unbelievable. They'll protest that one, too, I'm sure.
Somehow, some way.
It's just what they do.
He just wasn't afforded the opportunities he needed to really thrive in this country.
Yes. I'm sure something was systemically keeping him down. Could be his own criminal activity. All right, let's talk about BetterHelp, because this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp, and this Friday is World Mental Health Day. And there are issues we all deal with, personal, professional, otherwise, that sometimes they don't get solved very easily. Sometimes they drag on and you're just not sure how to deal with them. Your friends try to help when you talk to them about it, but maybe someone who's walked other people through these types of things is a smarter way to go. And that's where BetterHelp can really help you out. BetterHelp does the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. A short questionnaire helps identify your needs and preferences. And their more than 10 years of experience and industry-leading match fulfillment rate means they typically get it right the first time. But if you don't like your first therapist, you can switch. No problems at all. And with more than 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served more than 5 million people globally. And it works with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on more than 1.7 million client reviews. So this World Mental Health Day, we're celebrating the therapists who have helped millions of people take a step forward. If you're ready to find the right therapist for you, BetterHelp can help you start that journey. 3 Martini Lunch listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/3ml. That's better, HELP.com/3ml. All right, Scott, on to our bad martini now. And the fact that this got so little media attention in the past few days is absolutely shocking, particularly in the wake of everything else we've been dealing with, especially Charlie Kirk, but also, the comments from Jay Jones and other instances of political violence that we've seen in just the last few weeks. New York Post version of this story, though. A hate-filled New Jersey man arrested before the annual Red Mass in Washington had at least 200 explosives in a tent outside and a notebook declaring hatred for ICE and the Supreme Court justices who were due to arrive at the Catholic Church. Louis Geri, I'm guessing is how you spell that, Geri, or is how you say it, rather, had pitched his tent on the steps of the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle and allegedly told cops who approached him, quote, "You might want to stay back and call the federales. I have explosives," according to a filing obtained by the Washington Post. During attempted negotiations with officers, he allegedly handed them a notebook in which he espoused hatred for the Catholic Church, Supreme Court justices, Jews, and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, according to the document. Really hitting for the cycle with the left-wing nutjobs with that list of grievances. So back and forth, he threatened to detonate some explosives to prove they were real. The cops tried to come into the tent, and then they went back when he threatened to detonate. And then ultimately, when nature called, they nabbed him. And so, the justices ultimately stayed away once they knew about the security threat. But Scott, I mean, just the fact that nobody was injured doesn't mean this isn't a huge story. This was a major, major threat, potentially to members of the Supreme Court and anybody else going to this mast in right downtown Washington, D.C. For the most part, the story's been absolutely buried the last few days.
Yeah, I was, reading the news today, you're always skeptical of what's true and what's not. I saw this headline, the story, and initially thought, it's like a crazy guy who didn't want to leave and maybe had a bottle rocket. Like, you could see that, maybe this story falls apart. And in fact, the story just gets stronger, more serious the more you find out about it. And by the way, can I ask, how does this dude just like pitch a tent on the steps of a church and no one says or does anything, right? And it's not a big deal? Like, anyway, so yes, this very serious, where you had multiple Supreme Court justices at an appearance which was anticipated. People, knew they were going to be there as the Supreme Court term begins. And this guy's sitting there waiting for him inside a tent with 200 plus explosives. And I can already hear the left saying, this has nothing to do with us. This is just a crazy person. He had no idea what he was doing. Heck, he was arrested when he went to go urinate, which, maybe a person hell-bent on destruction could find a way to avoid, making himself vulnerable in that way. But at some point, when the crazy people keep saying the same things that you're saying, maybe look in the mirror a little bit. And this is the Minnesota case, the Hortman assassination. The two people assassinated in Minnesota, in fact. This is one the left throws at the right when you begin to say, a lot of these guys seem to be left-coded, who are trying to kill people. They say, what about Minnesota? You're the pro-life guy. That guy was clearly crazy, right? Yes, there was some pro-life writings, but he worked in the Walz administration. He said that Tim Walz had told him to kill people so he could be senator. Like, there's a lot of stuff happening with this guy, and I think the pro-life thing was not the main part of his agenda. But that's the one they always throw at the right when you start talking about these incidents. But now you have so many of these now in which some of the most important things to the left are the most important things to these people. And was this guy crazy? Again, the fact that he was arrested when he went to go urinate maybe indicates some instability there. I'll grant you that. But at some point, if everyone is parroting the lines that you are saying and taking that to the next step and plotting violence, we got to think about this. This guy checks the boxes. Hates the Supreme Court. Hates Jews. Hates ICE. All these things the left is harping on over these past months, and I guess going back more than a year now. And you take that, Democrats saying just J.B. Pritzker, Gestapo, and we're going to stop the authoritarian and all these things. Again, when you introduce these elements into people who already are perhaps somewhat unstable, bad things can happen. They're happening over and over and over again. And again, the most important things, the things that Democrats are saying over and over again, somehow end up in all of these either manifestos or bullet casings. And it just keeps happening.
No, that's true. And, as Jim has said, when you refer to your opponents as Nazis, people who are not all that stable will take that and say, well, I have no choice now but to do something.
Those people already have Nazis in their brain all day long.
Yeah, it's so, and so it doesn't take much. So John Fetterman seems to be the only Democrat out there saying, just because we disagree with these people doesn't mean they're Hitler. Take a step back, ratchet the rhetoric back down. So, and once again, the fact that the media has largely downplayed this story. Obviously, it's not as news significant, not as massive of a story if things had gone off and people had been injured or killed. But the fact that this type of plot with that many explosives got that close to some of the highest, most important people in our government, that's worthy of attention. That's worthy of attention. But perhaps because of what the manifesto said, we don't want to give it a lot of attention in the mainstream media. But that's changing because, as you said before, a lot of people aren't getting their information from there anymore. All right, let's talk about your skin. How is your skin doing? Is it aging gracefully? Is it aging well? Well, OneSkin is here to make sure that your skin is as healthy as possible for as long as possible. And they are known for their skincare favorites like OS1 Body, OS1 Face, OS1 Eye. But OneSkin stands out for their science-first approach to skin aging, delivering hydration, barrier support, and powerful longevity benefits in every single product. I've talked many times about Mrs. Columbus saying how light it is and how it absorbs well into the skin. I've talked about the sunscreen and how it not only protects you from those UV rays, but also just protects your skin in general and keeps you looking younger for longer. And so OneSkin is changing how we age by focusing on skin and scalp health at the cellular level. Powered by their patented OS1 peptide, every formula is designed to keep skin healthier, stronger, and more resilient over time. For a limited time, try OneSkin with 15% off using code 3ML at oneskin.co. That's 15% off at oneskin.co with the code 3ML. And after you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them, so please support the 3 Martini Lunch and tell them that we sent you. All right, Scott, on to our crazy martini now. And we've talked about Katie Porter before on this podcast, but we don't talk about her a lot. She was a very obnoxious congresswoman from California for several terms. Last time she ran for the House, she barely hung on to the seat. She ran for Senate, like you mentioned at the start of the show, in 2024, did not survive the primary as Adam Schiff and former Dodgers and Padres great Steve Garvey ended up in the general election. But now she's running for governor. Gavin Newsom can't run again. And so Katie Porter right now is the leading Democrat running for governor of California. And so she's sitting down with a reporter from CBS California. Her name is Julie Watts. And this whole conversation is under the umbrella of this redistricting fight because Gavin Newsom's doing what he's doing in response to what Texas is doing. And at one point, Julie Watts says, well, 40% of the state voted for Donald Trump. Aren't you going to need them? And she's like, no, I don't need them to win. And then the conversation kind of devolved from there. But you need that background to understand where we're going from here. This is an extended clip. I apologize that you're going to have to digest this much Katie Porter. But California voters, do you really want this for 4 years?
But you just said you don't need those Trump voters.
Well, you asked me if I needed them to win.
So you don't
I
think
feel like this is unnecessarily argumentative. What is your question?
The question is the same thing I asked everybody, that this is being called the empowering voters to stop Trump's power grab. Every other candidate has answered this question. This is not
argumentative. And I said I support it.
So, and the question is, what do you say to the 40% of voters who voted for Trump?
Oh, I'm happy to say that. It's the do you need them to win part that I don't understand. I'm happy to answer the question as you have it written, and I'll answer it.
And we've also asked the other candidates, do you think you need any of those 40% of California voters to win? And you're saying, no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote I can. And what I'm saying to you is that...
Well, to those voters. Okay, so you...
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it. Okay. Thank you.
You're not going to do the interview with us?
Nope, not like this. I'm not. Not with 7 follow-ups to every single question you ask.
Every other candidate has answered our follow-ups.
I don't care. I want to have a pleasant, positive conversation in which you ask me about every issue on this list. And if every question you're going to make up a follow-up question, then we're never going to get there.
Ms.
And
Porter,
we're just going to circle around.
I am an investigative
I have never
reporter.
had to do this before, ever.
You've never had to have a conversation with
to end
a
an
reporter?
interview.
Okay, but every other candidate has done this.
What part of I'm me? I'm running for governor because I'm a leader. So I am going to make...
So you're not going to answer questions from reporters? Okay, why don't we go through? I will continue to ask follow-up questions because that's my job as a journalist, but I will go through and ask these, and if you don't want to answer, you don't want to answer. So nearly every legislative...
I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you, and I don't want this all on camera.
I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you either.
Scott, Scott, look, we can't have follow-up questions here. I just want you to ask me, list the issue, and I'll give you my boilerplate answer on every issue. How dare you follow up and pinpoint my positions or have me contrast with somebody else that's running? Katie Porter is used to the royal treatment, and even the softest follow-up questions totally threw her off here.
Greg, I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you. I'd like a pleasant, positive experience here on the podcast. I'm just gonna call it. I'm gonna call it. It's pretty amazing what a little bit of pushback, and this goes back to our first martini. In fact, talking about how the mainstream media treats most Democratic candidates and positions when you are not asked difficult questions, even moderately difficult questions on the campaign. And she's run many times. It's not like this is not her first rodeo. When you're not asked moderately difficult questions, when you're not forced to explain yourself or your position, when you somehow don't have, and certainly it could be a brand, but if you don't have the political savvy to say, those 40%, I will work as hard as I can to win their vote. I know we're going to have some big differences on policies, but I hope to reach out to them and win their support. Like, bam. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to say. And she seems to feel so entitled, or at least comfortable, that the other 60% is a slam dunk, and she doesn't have to talk to the rest of the voters in California, that she can just, slide by. No big deal. But it is another example of how I think Democrats are harmed by not interacting with media members, or not even harsh, but just skeptical media members who might ask questions that voters also have. And it's also an example that perhaps the governing that works on TikTok, where, Katie Porter is in a congressional hearing and is able to dominate the time and interrogate a witness and hold something up, that might work for a million TikTok views, but it might not be the grand strategy to appealing to a statewide group of voters, as she's trying to do now as she runs for governor.
No, that's definitely true. And there are some other things we know about Katie Porter, which, based on that interaction, I'm sure will shock you. One, of course, that is well known is that Katie Porter divorced her husband in 2013. And in his filings, one of the complaints against her was that she dumped a pot of boiling potatoes over his head. So she's clearly very stable. But that's not it. Her staff also suffering. This is from Wikipedia, but it's well sourced. In January 2023, Politico reported on criticism that Porter was, quote, allegedly a terrible, according to some accounts, abusive and racist boss, unquote. The accusations include allegations she used racist language and, quote, ridiculed people for reporting sexual harassment, unquote. The Washington Post interviewed 8 former employees on condition of anonymity about their experiences working for Porter. The staffers described her as domineering and recounted multiple examples of her mistreatment of staffers, including instances where she berated staffers until they cried. In response to the allegations that she created a toxic workplace, Porter defended herself on The View in April 2023 by comparing herself to women of color who are discriminated against. So, as always, we can't actually deal with the actual allegations. We have to turn ourselves into a victim. And so, Scott, you can tell, though, even beyond the worst of those allegations, that just from that interaction, working for her or having to deal with her as your governor or lawmaker for any length of time would be exhausting. Even if you agree with her politics, just that personality is just, I don't know how you deal with it.
The other thing I note is it appears perhaps the candidate had those questions in advance, because she said, stick to the question. I'll answer that question. Don't ask me follow-ups. I'll answer those questions. So it sounds like that might have been. That's not great journalistic practice.
Right.
I'll just sort of explain in this situation. I kind of sort of understand it. It's it's a series of interviews with all the candidates, and in that particular sort of execution, I could potentially see them saying, "Look, going to each candidate saying, we're going to talk to everybody. We're going to talk to everybody about these 8 issues. And this is why we want you to come to the interview, and everyone, that this way voters will see every candidate on all these issues." So I can kind of see that happening. But again, for Porter then to assume that I'm only going to ask this one thing with no follow-ups and no questioning about anything you might say is really crazy. And then for her to say, I know she was saying, I never had to do this, which is stop an interview. But it certainly sounds as if she's saying, I've never had someone ask follow-up questions. This is weird. What am I supposed to do now?
That's just ridiculous. But yeah, that's like you said, when you're in such a deep blue area, and it's probably true in deep red areas where you don't get challenged much, you get rusty. Your debating skills, your rhetorical skills get a little sloppy, and then you run into anyone with the slightest bit of a challenging question, and you crumple. So, good luck, California. Good luck. She's still the top Democrat they have a jungle primary out there. It's not necessarily one Republican, one Democrat. It could be two Democrats. Definitely won't be two Republicans in California. But looking like right now, it's probably going to be her against Steve Hilton, the old Fox News personality. But long way to go. Their primary is not till spring of next year. So anyway, Scott, great to have you today. Thanks for all your help while Jim has been on this latest excursion, and we'll talk to you soon.
Greg, always great to have a pleasant, positive experience with you on the show.
Thank you. Glad you didn't have to cut it after all. Scot Bertram is the general manager of WRFH Radio Free Hillsdale on the campus of Hillsdale College in Hillsdale, Michigan. He's also the director of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network, where he hosts many different podcasts, including the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow all of us on X. Scott is at Scot Bertram with 1 T in Scott. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a terrific Wednesday. Join us again Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.